Right.
Shall we look at the papers?
Yes, let's do some work.
Are poised.
Here's the Daily Mail. It's asking their headline if anybody could still be alive as day 3 of the search starts for the capsized super yacht in Sicily. And that is the first picture we've seen, actually, of Hannah, the daughter of Britain's answer to Bill Gates, Mike Lynch. She's 18 and had just passed her A-levels and got into Oxford last week.
The Telegraph says an investigation is beginning into whether hatches on the yacht were left open and that caused the rapid sinking.
The Times is leading with a warning for the Prime Minister as business leaders claim giving more power to unions will stifle growth.
The Eye headlines the EU's plan to introduce a new €7 visa charge for Brits.
Well, let's take a look at these stories and some others with the GP and medical writer, Dr Renee Hunderkamp, and the journalist Claire Muldoon. Good morning.
Morning.
To both of you.
Thank you.
Shall we start then, Renee, with this sort of what feels like a very almost cruel hope that there could be life in this boat at the bottom of the sea? Talk of air pockets and previous survivors from similar incidents. But
I mean, look, I am always a believer that where there's life, there's hope, and we don't know that they're dead yet. So I think it's good for everyone to keep out a scintilla of hope. I think the chances of that actually being true are almost non-existent because you haven't just got the oxygen side of things, have you? You've got the temperature. And whilst I know it's in Sicily and the sea temperatures are 3 degrees higher than they normally are, they're still 50 metres down where it's going to be pretty cold. And hypothermia kills pretty quickly. It's very sad.
Well, we had his Mike Lynch's best mate on GBNews last night, and he was sort of saying, if anyone can survive it, he can. Very determined that he was still there, really clinging on to the hope. But as you say, it seems unlikely.
It seems unlikely. Very sad.
incredibly sad.
Claire, can we talk about heading to Europe?
Let's do. We were talking about going to North Korea on Saturday, remember?
Is there a €7 visa charge?
Funny,
to go to North Korea?
no. So, in 2025... if anyone from the United Kingdom wishes to travel to any country within the European Union, our passports aren't good enough, apparently. Just like they're not good enough for any other country, like Russia, Canada or the US. So now we have to invest in a €7 ETIAS, which is an electronic form of visa which will last for 3 years, which will enable you to travel by ferry, by train or by plane to a European country without anything going wrong. Or so we would think. I'm very cynical about this. I think this is just a money-making grab. I think it's extortion at its highest level. Surely a British passport, or indeed any passport given through any country, is enough and gives you the validness and gives you the protection and gives the other country the protection too that you are a citizen, a bona fide citizen of the country from which you're travelling from.
But, so you have to get a visa to travel just about anywhere else. You have to pay for exactly to go to the United States.
Yeah, but why do we have to pay for visas?
Because we're not in the EU.
But we're not...
They're making money, which, I completely understand. Lots of countries do it. It's a way of raising revenue. It's £2.33 a year. I mean, goodness me, people spend more than that on their latte.
But why, Renee, why do they need to do it? I think it's diminishing the power of a passport. I really do.
But
why have a passport?
So many other countries.
But why? But I've got an issue with every other country as well that we have to do it for.
Yeah.
I don't understand the reasoning behind it.
I never understand why, when you've checked in for a flight, you then have to do
show your passport.
Because you've shown your passport, they've scanned it, they know who you are, they know who's getting on. Why do you even have to go through border control? They know who you are, they know you're getting off.
Or at the gate, still show your passport.
Apply that argument to all of it. What it should do in time is speed things up because they will no longer, for us, have to stamp the passport. And have someone who travels regularly to Europe, it's the stamping business which takes the time.
Won't they have to stamp
No, it's just a fingerprint, isn't it? Now, I, as someone who abhors being tracked and traced, would normally say, I don't want to give my fingerprints, but frankly, I've given it to America to go in there, so, what's the difference?
I mean, I get your irritation.
Yes.
I mean, it is irritating that suddenly for places we've just been able to go to, we now have to do it. But, we voted for Brexit, and
but did
this
people
price
vote
we have
for
to
this?
pay.
I don't think people realised that this would be part of the
Well, they
deal.
didn't. I think this
Labour have promised this reset, but the EU saying we're not even doing any special.
I think the Europeans are just behaving as if it's a toxic divorce, and they're just
it's £2
doesn't matter. It's the principle, Renee. It's the principle.
Frankly,
and you're a very principled lady, so I'm surprised.
Pay £2.33 to not be part of that failing economic bloc.
What experts are saying, and airlines and holiday firms say that there'll be lots of travellers that just aren't wised up to this, and they'll be then facing queues of 96 hours and delays to travel.
So we've got a year to get our head around it.
Well, put more staff on the gates. That's the answer. They're not manning the gates enough to make it more physically attractive to go through. It's just incredible.
I waited an
in this day and age.
At the weekend at Heathrow in the child line because they had one border.
See, that's ridiculous.
One.
Yeah. Well,
and Border Force are going on strike as well.
It usually runs better when they go on strike because they get the army in.
Right. Let's talk about Yvette Cooper pledging to lock up and deport more migrants than have happened since 2018.
Well, we know that won't happen, don't we? I read this story so many times this morning trying to get my head around her target and her figures because they're going to deport more migrants than the highest 6-month figure since 2018. But they couldn't quite work out what that was. She's confused herself over the figures. Apparently, for the last 6 months, it was 14,000, and they're going to beat that. It's really confusing. They're going to lock up more by freeing up some extra spaces in the detention centres that the last government had already, opened up and got underway. I don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't think this government, especially Yvette Cooper, who's paraded around with her refugees welcome sign, believes it either and doesn't want to do it. They can't get ahead to run their new border forces task force. This is all words, and the proof of this pudding is going to be in the eating, and I suggest it will be a very small pudding.
Well, I think they are now very aware how important this issue is of what we've seen.
Well, they are, but I think it's all sound bites. I think it's all headline grabbing at the moment for the Labour government, and I just wish they would actually act instead of the bluster and the verboseness of things. They've got a country to run, and I don't think they've started.
They're pledging to do it, so we'll be able to hold them to account on that. Claire, let's talk about ham. 2 slices of it a day. Who eats 2 slices of ham a day?
Well, I never eat ham.
I mean, do you?
No, not 2 slices a day.
I would say.
Well, the whole thing is here. This is a study from Cambridge University and Glasgow University have rubber stamped it more or less, which is a bit rich coming from Glasgow and Scotland. Eating 2 slices of ham a day can apparently raise the risk of type 2 diabetes by 15%. Now, I'm sceptical about this on 2 levels. People in Argentina eat red meat all the time, very good quality red meat. They do not have the levels of diabetes or health issues that we experience in this country. I think you have to take a look at the sample that we're researched on, and I think you have to look at their propensity to either be obese or to eat more processed food or what they actually eat the ham with. Correct me if I'm wrong, Renee.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are so many things. I couldn't even get to the study this morning, but I will, because I would like to see where the funding's coming from. Because I think whenever a study starts rubbishing good quality red meat, you have to wonder if it's coming from a vegetarian, a vegan, and that happens all of the time. This is actually a meta-analysis. So they've actually looked back over old studies and got together 2 million samples to have a look. The problem is it's observational. So you're relying on people to tell you what they're eating and how much they're exercising and how much they weigh and all of those other things. What we don't know is the weight of these people, because that's the biggest contributor towards type 2 diabetes. All of the studies that I've looked at show that very good quality pasture-fed red meat is actually as good as
yes.
Well, I think it always boils down to common sense with these studies. It's quite obvious that processed meat, eating it regularly, probably not a great idea. Most people would think that stacks up, and that's borne out in this study.
Sadly, I don't think most people do, and that's the thing. I think people don't understand. They don't understand that ham is a processed meat. They think ham's OK, but McDonald's might be bad, or Burger King, or whoever else it is. I think what we should be doing with these studies is explaining to children at school, giving them cooking lessons, letting them learn how to cook and what good nutrition is, and explaining why this is bad. That's, as you know,
My
what I
daughter's favourite food being bacon is not a good thing, though.
Oh, but it is. There's nothing better than a bacon butty using with butter and ketchup.
Bacon's lovely.
Yeah, but
You see, I just don't know what processed meat is.
Anything you don't cook from scratch.
Right. Well, actually, I don't eat meat, so it doesn't...
Well, anything that also doesn't look like it's just come from an animal. You know, if you have a chicken carcass, clearly that's not processed meat, is it?
But it's not just meat, let's make it clear. Anything you buy that you don't cook from scratch is processed. Because
why is that always so bad for you, then?
Well, it's very clear now. The data is very clear. The more processed food you eat, the more your cancer risk goes up. The chemicals,
but why?
Because of the chemicals that go into the processing of the food and the stability agents and all of the thickeners.
So stuff to stop it going off and all that.
Yes.
All of that actually causes cancer, causes obesity. Our obesity endemic is caused by processed food, for sure.